This left hand exercise is absolutely amazing at developing your left hand, and of course we're going to be talking about it today because today's lesson is tips and exercises for the left hand. Tip number one that will help you play with your left hand better is to slow down and give yourself enough time to process the notes. Tip number two is when you learn pieces hands separately, which you should as a beginner, learn your left hand first. The reason behind this is it will, for one, give your left hand a head start on playing the piece, but it will get in your mind that you should be prioritizing your left hand. We prioritize our right hand so much in society and piano playing as well. A lot of people, like I said, they'll start out with their right hand, but if you struggle with your left hand, start with that one. Third tip, play your left hand twice as much as your right hand. Did you know that a key to success isn't time, but frequency? So it's not like, oh, I've been playing piano for 4 years. It's like, oh, how often have you been playing during those 4 years? And the left hand is no different. So if you play your left hand more often than your right hand, guess what? It's going to be better. I promise you that. Number 4, learn your chords. As a beginner piano player, that's mostly what you're going to be doing with your left hand anyway. And if you learn your chords, it's just more that your brain can fill in when you have those chords come up in your pieces. Even seasoned piano players, even if you've been playing for years, you're going to see chords in your music all the time, either as block chords, arpeggios, or something in between. So learn your chords. I have a lot of lessons on chords here on the channel. I'm going to hopefully remember to put a link for you to learn your chords. Number 5. Learn your scales and arpeggios. This goes along with chords. You're going to see these in your music all the time, but specifically, scales are really helpful in helping you learn how to play in different keys, which is what you're going to have to know as a piano player. And yeah, so learn your scales and arpeggios as well. Real quick tip, if you want to learn all your scales and arpeggios, and we even have some patterns we're going to talk about that you're going to be able to find in here, you're going to want to pick up this book of scales, chords, arpeggios, and cadences. It's going to be really helpful for everything we're talking about today. Number 6, become familiar. I can't talk today. Become familiar with common left-hand patterns that you're going to see in your music all the time. And this kind of transitions us into the common patterns portion of the lesson. But first, I want to tell you, if you want to learn about the patterns we're going to talk about and many, many more, not only do you want to check out this book that I mentioned a minute ago, but you also want to check out this 100 left-hand patterns book. You can find like boogie-woogie patterns, you know, like open fifth type of really simple patterns, jazz patterns, blues patterns, all sorts of funky, awesome stuff in here. So pick up this book. I'll link it to you in the description. It's time for the common left-hand patterns you should know. Number 1 is cadences. What is a cadence? Well, a cadence is a type of chord progression or a pattern of chords that you're going to see commonly throughout your music. And there's a bunch of different types of cadences. You want to become familiar with like a 1-4-5-7-1 cadence. And you're going to find those, guess what, in that book that I told you about. So make sure that you're practicing some sort of cadences regularly. You will be surprised that when you start practicing them, you're going to look at your music and be like, oh, there's a 1-4-5-1 cadence. There's a half cadence. Perfect, authentic cadence. Of course, the cadences could be a whole lesson on itself. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, just learn some cadences out of this book and you'll be good to go. Next left-hand pattern you should become familiar with is the walking bass line. It's a bass line that walks, and what that means is that it like steps up and then back down again. You're not going to have these huge leaps across the piano. It's really like pretty easy to follow. I'm going to show you one specific walking bass pattern. This is the most simple walking bass pattern I can show you. All you're doing is you're taking a chord, and then you're just on the last note of the chord, the top note, you're just adding a note. And you're just moving to different locations. I call this a walking 6th bass line because there's a 6th at the top. Number 3, I just want to go over this really quick, is arpeggios. I mentioned a little bit earlier about how arpeggio is really just like a block chord or a chord, but played separately. And you want to learn as many of those as you can. Why? Because you're going to find those in your music all the time, and this is actually the perfect place to learn your arpeggios. But let me show you, I'm going to show you a little bit on the piano about it as well as I'm talking here. You can kind of see what I mean. Number 4, you're going to see this one in your music all the time, particularly with Mozart a lot of times, and that is the Alberti bass. The Alberti bass is that you're basically playing the kind of the chords that we've been talking about, the major chords, and you're going to be playing them notes separate. However, there's a certain pattern of the Alberti bass where you play the bottom note, the top note, middle note, top note. And take a look at that. Bottom, top, middle, top, bottom, top, middle, top. Number 5 pattern that you should be aware of is just chord comping. Chord comping is really easy to explain. It's basically you're taking chords, the chords that we've been playing, it could be any chord, and you are playing it to a certain rhythm in a piece. Let me show you. If you found this lesson helpful so far, make sure you subscribe. You have all notifications turned on because you don't want to miss all the new lessons coming out, do you? Let's get right on to the final part of the lesson. It's actually not even the final part. The next part of the lesson, which is the meat of the lesson, which are the exercises that are going to help you get better. Let's take a look at some of those. First type of exercise are these scales, arpeggios, and cadences. How about that? So take a look at those. I talked about those already in the lesson. So let's talk about number 2. Czerny's studies for the left hand. Carl Czerny has made a lot of wonderful etudes, which are like practice pieces that help you learn a specific thing on piano. And guess what? Your boy has you covered because he wrote 24 studies for the left hand. These are actually pretty easy and easy key signatures. A lot of beginner students who have been playing for a few weeks, few months can handle these. These actually are no big deal, and they heavily involve playing a lot of left hand parts and training different things in the left hand. And each piece, each etude, has something different to teach you. Let's get on to the next set of exercises. I have more exercises for you, and they're again by the best, according to some people, Carl Czerny. And of course, your boy has you covered once again, because he has School for the Left Hand, Opus 399, of course, rolls right off the tongue. Everybody knows what that is. These are more complicated. So once you learn a lot of the ones I just showed you in the other one, and you are looking for something more challenging, or maybe you've been playing for a while, take a look at those. They are challenging, even for me. I'd have to practice them quite a bit before I could really get them underneath my hands, but they're probably the ones I would start with since I've been playing a while. Okay, it's time for the final review, and then I have a quiz for you, actually. I know quizzes aren't like top of the list of popularity, but they are helpful nonetheless. But let's do the wrap-up first. Remember today that I taught you some helpful tips and showed you some common patterns and also showed you some exercises. So we'll go over some of the tips I told you to play slow. Remember, that's the #1 tip of all time for anybody. Learn the left hand part first. Play the left hand part twice as often to get that frequency in there. And learn those common left hand patterns. And then, yeah, I think that was the main few. And then we got the left hand patterns that you should know about. I want you to pause the video and see if you can name them. But if you can't, you can unpause, and here we go. I told you about chord comping. That was actually the last one I showed you. Alberti bass, arpeggios, cadences, and that awesome walking bass line. And make sure to just practice those Czerny exercises, because that's literally how you're going to get better. I mean, all the tips and everything will help you a lot, but make sure to take a look at those exercises. But guess what? I have a quiz for you. Everybody's favorite time is quiz time. Here's the quiz. It's a playing quiz. The best, right? I want you to play one example of each of the common patterns that I showed you today. And I want you to try to do it. Just pause the video right now. Try to do it on your own. If you can't do it, here's the thing. You need to go back to that section again. I'm going to timestamp it out. You know, you can look at the description or the little bar. And go back to that section and watch that section again. You can even copy the ones that I gave you by watching that section again. But yeah, that'll make sure that you really get a big portion of this lesson down. These patterns, like I said, I already told you to practice, you know, the exercises, but these patterns you're going to find in your music all the time, and this will really broaden your horizons in terms of the amount of music you'll be able to play. Because once again, once you learn a pattern, you're going to see those patterns again, and it's going to make your life a whole lot easier. So that's the quiz. We got one more thing. It's time for the power tip. Yes, we are finishing out strong today with the power tip. Practice your scales and arpeggios. I already said that earlier, but once you learn them in octaves. A lot of students, first of all, struggle with playing octaves up and down on the keyboard, but also it's going to help you develop more like hand control, because you're going to have to maintain the same distance playing up and playing down on the piano. So once you learn your scales and arpeggios, learn them in octaves. So there you go. Bazinga, bazanga. I don't even know what that means. But anyway, of course, you want to check out the next lesson right here for you. But check out this lesson, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.